I can say I'm better than anyone you would ever have in this country.
How long you stay in power does not determine your fate.
Now this map shows the number of African presidents that have been in power for more than 23 years, with most of them having led their countries between 30 to 44 years in power. So why is it that African presidents like to remain in power? And you might actually think that this is because of money, because they want to amass wealth. Well, maybe to a little extent, but it is really far from that. Their problem is not really money. So in this video, we are going to find out why African presidents like to stay in power and the skillful tactics they use to stay in power. Now, you see, Africa has the youngest population in the world, and the average African has about 19 years. This actually means that a majority of the African population were born when these presidents were in power.
We've grown up on Museveni's regime. I was born in 1980. 1980, it is too long for our president to be there.
In Uganda, for example, 3/4 of the population is under 37 years. Now, this implies that more than 70% of the population was born when Yoweri Museveni was already president.
Protect and defend the constitution.
But then, most of these presidents never intended to stay in power. Most of them actually took power from authoritarian regimes with the aim of bringing democracy and a high standard of living to their citizens.
We have no plans to stay long. All we are here for is to set a just system.
How long you stay in power does not determine your fate. It's what you do that determines your fate, as far as I'm concerned. But let me tell you one thing. My fate is in the hands of the Almighty Allah. I will deliver to the Gambian people, and if I have to rule this country for 1 billion years, I will.
So what happens that they change? In order for us to examine this, we need to go to Gambia. In July 1994, Yahya Jammeh took power through a bloodless coup from then elected but authoritarian Sir Dada Jawara, and then promised his people that he was not going to stay in power and that he was going to bring democracy, transparency to his people. 22 years later,
I can say I'm better than anyone you would ever have in this country.
well, that doesn't end there. He won all the elections that he organized in his reign. We should understand that in such governments, the political party controls everybody from districts right up to the level of ministers. So every election that he organized, he won, which is very obvious. But in 2016, something very strange happened. All the political parties formed a coalition and decided to present one single candidate, Adama Barrow, who by then also promised his people that he was going to make only 3 years if he was elected as president. So at this stage, everyone was angry with Yahya Jammeh and was dedicated in removing Yahya Jammeh. Even his own bodyguards were secretly turning against him. So during a meeting between President Yahya Jammeh and the mayor of Kalifing, the bodyguards of the president overheard a discussion between the president and the mayor when they were talking about the provision of extra registered fake ballot cards. Imagine, the total votes of the Gambians had to be 800,000, and the president and the mayor had already planned for an extra 300,000 that they were going to introduce into the votes, meaning that they were going to remove some extra 300,000 votes and introduce their own 300,000 votes that were fictitious. So the bodyguards overheard this and took action.
2 bodyguards broke into the building and set fire to the fake voting cards. All 300,000 of them.
That changed everything. And it happened shortly before the election. So it happened at a time when registrations for voters' cards had already concluded.
Action. They burnt all 300,000 fake registered foreign voters' cards. Now, this was a major blow to the president because they were almost on the election day. So the president and the mayor could not produce another 300,000 voters' cards before the election date, giving chance for a fair election to take place in Gambia. More to that, since it was already close to voting day, the registration of voters' cards had already stopped. But then, even though the fake registered cards were burned, no one in Gambia could actually believe that President Jammeh would lose an election. Now, the election results finally came out and Adama Barrow won the elections.
That was the first time an opposition leader won elections. That was the first time it happened in this country after 52 years.
New year, new style, new president, new life.
But what actually surprised people was President Jammeh's reaction. Knowing who he is, no one could actually believe that he could accept the result.
I'm calling you to wish you all the best. The Gambian people have spoken, and I have no reason to contest the will of the Almighty Allah. Hello? Are you hearing me?
It was unbelievable.
No, not so fast. 1 week later, he changed his mind.
My total rejection of the election results and thereby annulling the elections.
And he changed his mind after 1 week.
Now, this is the real Yahya Jammeh that we know. He rejected the elections, meaning that he wanted to stay more in power. Now, after his rejection of the elections, ECOWAS intervened diplomatically and he actually ignored ECOWAS' rejection. ECOWAS had actually given him 5 weeks to leave the presidency. So when he rejected this, ECOWAS had to use brute force. They went with soldiers to the Gambian border. That is when he gave up power.
I have decided today, in good conscience, to relinquish the mantle of leadership of this great nation with infinite gratitude to all Gambians.
From his speech, Yahya Jammeh said he left with his conscience. But then, if ECOWAS didn't intervene with full force, Yahya Jammeh would have still been president of Gambia as we speak. Even Adama Barrow, who said he was going to rule for 3 years after winning elections, finally added 2 years when he took over office.
Is a man whom hadn't been vetted properly by the people, because people were hoping he would be resigning in 3 years. Now it seems, since Barrow ascended to power, he is showing signs that he is determined to go beyond the 3-year term. And quite simply, the country has so many challenges.
How can the person who led us to struggle for the right to elect our own leaders become a dictator? The person who led us in struggle to assert our rights as human beings become a dictator. Strange logic, strange definitions.
So what is the implication of this? Why do African presidents really like to stick to power? If you look at this map, you will discover that they have a common reason, and we are going to look at it right now. But I will hint you, it's not about money. There is a lot more. My name is Asongwe Luis and you are watching Africa Today. If you haven't liked this video, I don't really know what you are waiting for. Hit the like button and share with family and friends. If your president wants to amass wealth in Africa, it will just take a president 2 years maximum, because you know Africa has a lot of resources, and with all the deals that some of these presidents usually carry out, it's going to take a very short amount of time. It's not going to take a president 40 years, 30 years before he's going to make wealth. There is something more to this that actually makes these presidents want to hold on to power, and we are going to discover that in a bit. So in order to understand the reasons, we need to go back to a part of the speech that you didn't listen to when Yahya Jammeh was rejecting the election results.
Fellow Gambians and friends of the Gambia and the electorate, you will remember last Friday when I declared to you the acceptance of the results of the elections. I accepted the results then, believing that what was presented was the will of you, the Gambian people. I accepted the results in good faith. You are all living witnesses to what happened after the acceptance of my statement, and the results that were announced by the IEC. The campaign of terror that went around, bullying, vandalizing.
The campaign of terror that he's talking about in this video, it is the population that was going around talking about Yahya's prosecution after he left office. So when he heard 1 week after he had left power that people are moving on the streets and demanding his prosecution, he came back and annulled the results. So the first reason is fear of prosecution. Now, in order to give more flesh to what we have just said, we need to look at Yahya Jammeh's trajectory when he left power. When he left power, he escaped to Equatorial Guinea. And who is in Equatorial Guinea? Teodoro Obiang Nguema. He is the grandfather of people who have stayed for long in Africa. He has made 44 years in power and is actually showing no signs of giving up. He took office through a coup from his uncle, Masias Nguema, in 1979. I mean, his own uncle. And this will not go without mentioning that he executed his uncle before taking power. Since then, he has won elections after election in his country. You know, still organized by him. And in one particular election year, he was the only candidate available for voters to vote. Another reason why African presidents actually stay in power is because of weak institutions. Now, most of them, when they are in power, they actually make institutions to be weak so that they can actually have full control of the country, so that they can do anything they want. So when they are leaving office, they are afraid that those weak institutions will not protect them, because the next president that is going to come after them is also going to be as strong as them. And so they are not going to have protection from anyone. So their political rivals that are going to take power after them are going to take advantage of those weak institutions and do whatever they want to do with them. Now, the next thing that actually makes presidents to stay in power is too much praise. Now, too much praise usually comes from government collaborators, that is, appointed officials by the ruling government. Now, these appointed officials usually fear to lose their positions because they know that when a new government comes into power, they are going to lose their positions, or they are going to be ejected by the new government. So there is this common thing in these countries that have these long presidents that they call motion of support. Before a president's term even goes half, you see government officials in different areas, even right down to the district levels, start saying they are putting their motion of support for the president. Some government officials go as far as giving motion of support. That is when, in cases where they see that the president is really adamant to take the presidency and doesn't want to continue in the next term, they go as far as giving motion of support to the son of the president or the daughter of the president. We have seen this many times. In Gabon, for example, the ousted Ali Bongo took power from his father, Omar Bongo, who ruled between 1967 and 2009. In the DRC, Joseph Kabila had ruled for 17 years after his father, Laurent Désiré. Too much praising the president and proposing a next term to the president by collaborators is a very big issue. They don't only do it to the president, but also to the son of the president when the president is incapacitated, when the president cannot rule. And this is done simply because when the son takes over, it literally is the same regime. The son actually maintains the same people all over, because those are the people that his father had put in place. That's the system that works. As it is always said in French, on ne change pas l'équipe qui gagne. That is, we don't change a team that is winning, or we don't change a winning team. So those are some of the things that actually make it. But then another reason why presidents usually stay for long is due to the followers. In some countries, the followers don't do anything. They don't speak out that this man has stayed for long and all that. They leave it the way it is.
Gambians create dictators. We ourselves as citizens, we make Jammeh to become a dictator.
I can say I'm better than anyone you would ever have in this country.
So what are the tactics that some presidents use to stay in power? Some of the tactics that they use to stay in power is that they make the conditions of living to be very hard for the citizens. And then at a particular moment, maybe during elections, they are going to come in as if they are angels and come and propose to the citizens that, hey, we want to build this road, we want to make this project, we want to provide youths with projects and all that, money to start up business and all that. During the end of their mandate, they deliberately make things difficult. In the case when a father wants to transfer power to the son, what they usually do is they increase the price of fuel, increase the price of several things, and then they just wait. When the son comes and announce that he wants to stand as president, and these are the projects that he is bringing. The first thing he wants to do is he wants to reduce the price of fuel. The next thing he wants to do is he wants to give free education. He wants to build roads. He wants to build hospitals. And in the case where there is actually a transition from a father to a son, the son actually does those things for the first 5 or 6 years. And after that, everything goes back to normal, the way the father was doing. So that is a tactic that the father used to transfer power to the son. We have been seeing these things. It's not like it's in the movie. These things have already passed and some are already in the pipeline. In Congo Brazzaville, the president has already appointed his son as the cabinet minister. That's already in preparation of what is going to come ahead. Let's wait and see what comes out of that. Another tactic that they use to stay in power is to criticize the West, criticize the East, criticize the North. I'm not saying all these places are perfect, but I'm just giving you as a tactic that this is what these dictators sometimes use to stay in power. While external factors have contributed a fair share to certain problems, internal factors should not be undermined. They make a we and them issue instead of solving the problems at hand. You see that a road actually needs tarring, and the country has to put budget for tarring, and somebody will be saying that the East, the North, the West, the South is responsible. Now, some of these things we really need to look at these things and solve it from an objective perspective. I know some people come and say, hey, let's support African politics. Yes, it's true that we have to be realistic to our real problems and solve the real problems that are facing us. Another tactic that presidents use to stay in power is that they give so much economic power to certain individuals. Now, these individuals, for example, they will say that only this particular person should import cooking oil. Only this particular person should be in charge of distributing cooking oil. Only this particular person should be in charge of selling microphones. Only this particular person should be in charge of drinking water. Only this particular person should be in charge of this. Now, what that does is that it actually makes that individual to be very strong financially, and that individual is just like their treasurer. So they know already that if you are in charge of supplying only tiles, for example, you are the only one in the country that is authorized for selling only tiles. For example, they will estimate that, okay, if we import this amount of tiles and tiles is sold at this price, it means that you make maybe, for example, 10 billion. So if you're making 10 billion a year, they will not be disturbing you. The moment when they have elections, they'll come and say, okay, you made a profit of $10 billion. Now, give us $5 billion so that we can run this campaign and continue this system. Those are some of the tactics that presidents use to stay in power. So in order to regulate and control power in a country, term limits are usually set in constitutions so that there is leadership succession. Term limits are not sufficient. They are meant to reduce the temptation of leaders to overstay in power. And it's very important because it actually gives hope to the citizens. This helps to legitimize democratically elected leaders, but then are still not enough. Other ingredients like accountability are also needed to help in development, prosperity, and peace. Much that regular transfer of power helps to give hope to citizens that a new ruler or a new leader is going to bring new approach and programs that are going to help them move from existing problems. Now, countries in Africa that have had regular change or transfer of power have actually seen benefits from that. We're talking about countries like Ghana, Botswana, South Africa, Mauritius. Now, these countries have actually reaped and have seen the benefits of transfer of power. We are not saying that Africa should copy word for word the blueprints of democracy from the West. Now, just like China, Africa should define its own kind of democracy, but the one that is going to help its people. The Chinese have their own system of governing, which is also democratic to an extent. The president of China, for example, started as a secretary clerk and was promoted right up to the level of the president. But you ask, he was promoted by who? It's through elections. Many people actually know about the economic success of China, but they don't know the political system that is found behind that success. It is a well-defined system that have been crafted and tailored to the needs and the culture of Chinese people. Africans can also do the same, and all 54 African countries must not have the same design. Each area has to be crafted, because as we speak, the democracy that we have in Africa have been taken and fitted into different African countries, which should not be the case. Each country should actually tailor its democracy to fit its society. You see, why we argue that the one-party system is actually a problem, if we go back in history, one of the fathers of African politics, Kwame Nkrumah, fought for African states to be liberated. He brought independence to Ghana, and also he is responsible for the different states that had independence at that time, because he said that their independence is meaningless without the independence of other African countries. But what happened when he was given the chance to be president? When he became president, he rejected multipartyism and was immediately called a dictator by his people, the same people who put him to power.
For democracy, if it wasn't democracy, then they should have left us with their colonial masters. They did not force us.
That again is a total misunderstanding of African history.
And when asked later why he did that, Kwame Nkrumah said that he had just had independence from the colonial masters, and there was a very limited amount of people in the country that were educated, and he had opened several industries, and these industries needed to be manned, and most of those that could run these industries were in the opposition. And he asked, how was he going to lead the country if he was fighting with the people that had to build the country? And finally, democracy is in stages. It needs to go from one stage to another. We cannot leave one stage and jump level 5.
Almost all of the African states which broke away from the colonial yoke established one-party states.
Now, this is to say that we need a kind of democracy that looks into our immediate problems and provide solutions to our problems. My name is Asongwe Luis and you are watching Africa Today. If you haven't liked this video, I don't really know what you are waiting for. Hit the like button and share with family and friends. This is the end of the video. I want to thank all our members who are supporting the channel. See you.